My name is Brock, and this is the Dungeon Master's Toolkit podcast. On today's episode, I talked to Sean about professional GMing, Blades in the Dark, and player information. Support the show by interacting with the episode and sharing it with your friends, using our affiliate links to either Amazon or DriveThruRPG when you purchase new RPG stuff, and join the Patreon at any level to gain access to the 5 Shrine text posts, 50 minutes of design note audio episodes, and the I Know a Guy random table supplement. And with that, let's jump into the episode. Welcome, everybody. Today I have Sean, aka Scene 4, with me today. Welcome, Sean.
Hey, great to be here.
Sean, why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in tabletop role-playing games?
Sure, I am a professional game master as of about 2020 is when I got my start. But my origins in role-playing games are much earlier than that. Around, I think it must have been 2009 or 2010. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I started playing with a group of friends at my local library. So I always have a soft spot for library programs that run RPGs because those are my origins. I had a group of friends that I knew they played Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition at that time. I knew they played every week at the local library, and I think I remember specifically, actually, I was like in the car with some of my friends when I asked him, like, hey, do you have like a seat? Is there like, could I get in on that? And I remember one of my other friends who did not play RPGs was like, no, don't do this. It was funny, like there was an angel and a devil on my shoulder. But I got into it. It turns out I really loved role-playing games, and it just grew from there. The guy who ran that tabletop RPG program, his name was Brian, and basically all credit for everything in my sort of RPG career trajectory goes to him, because he was also the one who introduced us to playing other games. Like, we would play other board games, we'd play other systems, and we would like try lots of new things. The sort of core of we would paint minis, we'd do arts and crafts. Like, he introduced me, I think, to hobbyism, and that, I think, sort of set my course for the rest of like my RPG career, because from then I like never felt afraid to try new things or to diversify or to expand the way that I pursued my hobby, or to include things beyond simply sitting at the table and rolling dice into my hobbyism. He even wrote a blog, as I recall, that like introduced me to like the idea of like, oh, thinking critically about RPGs, and like, oh, there's all these different approaches, different ways to come at RPGs philosophically. So, and all of that has sort of coalesced into what I do now.
So a very kind of wide branching hobby within the tabletop space.
Yeah, absolutely. Like just the grand diversity of experience that exists inside this hobby, because, like, you wouldn't expect this hobby to include like, at first blush, you wouldn't expect this hobby to include like arts and crafts, like, but it really does. Like, there's like mini painting, and there's like, now there's dice making, and like cosplay has been added into the hobby. I don't do that, but personally, but I absolutely, a number of my friends we're still friends to this day, we still play RPGs together, who were sitting with me at that library table. I'm literally, right before this interview, I was messaging them about what we're gonna play next, and it looks like it's gonna be Stars Without Number, which is one of my all-time favorite games. But it seems like they're hungry for science fiction, so we still play together. Those bonds of friendship that first were cultivated around the table in that public library are still alive today, which I think is great. But yes, like you said, it's absolutely about the diversity of what the hobby has to offer. Because I would say the first thing that really cracked my brain open about what RPGs were capable of was when I played Fiasco for the first time, which, if you're not familiar, is a game, is basically like a long form improv game that uses like dice to generate some suggestions from a play set, which is sort of a genre and setting manual, to basically, over the course of like a 3-hour RPG session, produce the plot of like a Coen Brothers movie, like Fargo or Blood Simple. And when I played that and we did it, we really did it. Like at the end, we are like, holy shit, I would watch that movie. That was so fun and funny. Like the joy of being creator and audience simultaneously in that game, and like the fact that, oh my gosh, we can just decide what happens. Like we barely need the rules at all. That kind of broke my mind open about what this hobby was capable of, and from there I have never looked back when it comes to like seeking out what new designers are doing, what people are adding to this hobby, what inspiration people are drawing from, and spreading that sort of like mind-opening experience has been the goal that I've taken on as a professional GM, as like a video creator on TikTok, which I picked up last year.
It sounds like you have tried a number of different tabletop systems. You mentioned Stars Without Number being a favorite. What other are your favorite tabletop systems?
Yeah, this is always so hard to do, but I think I have to just like go with my gut on this one, and with the with the evidence that I have of the games that I keep coming back to, the games that I keep playing. And I think at this point I am basically obligated to say that Blades in the Dark is my favorite RPG because I keep coming back to it. I really love it. It's super intuitive to me, and I love everything that it's doing. I also am a big fan of Wanderhome and Avery Alder's Dream Askew, Dream Apart, which are both these which are both no dice no masters games, because that's the most recent game that did the Fiasco thing that like broke my brain open and showed me like, ooh, look what this medium can do. So every time I read or play a game that does that for me, that opens things up for me, that always like sort of enters my list of favorite games. So Blades in the Dark did that, Apocalypse World did that, and Masks to a similar extent, and Wanderhome. I think most recently, actually, Jay Dragon, the creator of Wanderhome, is working on a new game called Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, which is basically going to do it again. It's like a combination of an RPG and like a legacy board game. It's like an RPG where you unlock characters, where you change the game as you go, where it all the characters are pre-generated and they all have like tracks where like they advance through these like kind of character arcs. This game is doing some really interesting stuff with diceless game mechanics, and with stickers, and with the ability to change the face of the game text itself. It's like avant-garde. Like I love seeing people on the cutting edge, on the bleeding edge of game design, who are like legitimately trying new things that have never been done before in the hobby.
What is it about Blades in the Dark that keeps pulling you back?
It's gotta be the faction play. There's something about the setup of Blades in the Dark, which is like a sort of pressure cooker environment where you're all trapped in the same city, and everything in the city belongs to someone. So you can't get anything without taking it from someone else. And it is stratified by these factions who all control different slices of the city. So everything you do is going to piss somebody off and is going to impress somebody else. Like somebody's going to be happy that you struck a blow against their enemy, and all that enemy and all their allies are going to be mad at you. So it's just like a recipe for drama of all these like interlocking and internecine conflicts between factions, and the fact that the party, the group of players, is a faction from session one. You have your individual characters, but the main character of the game is the crew, is the gang. And you might play multiple characters over the life of the gang. You might build and bring in new characters, new blood into the gang, but the gang is eternal. So you might actually end up at the end of I haven't seen this happen, but you might end up at the end of the campaign with a completely different crew. But the crew was there through all of it. The crew was the constant. And so giving the players a faction and the ability to get involved in all this intrigue and conflict and kingdom building, making allies, making enemies, making those really key decisions where players basically get to choose who the villain of the campaign is, basically by who they piss off the most. That is irresistible to me. And I should, by all rights, I should find like the setting and the lore of Blades in the Dark like a little too edgy, a little too steampunk, a little too weird. Like it's like if you say it all in one breath, oh yeah, you're in a city surrounded by lightning walls that are powered by demon leviathan's blood, and there's a bunch of ghosts and vampires in it. You're like, is that too much? But no, that's not actually the heart of the game. It's just the recipe for like creating this sort of pressure cooker environment where there are these eldritch horrors, there are the city is haunted, and as a side effect, killing people isn't really a good idea because then their ghosts are just going to come back to haunt you, literally.
I have had a hard time finding a dice rolling mechanic that I like better than the Blades in the Dark mechanics, just
It
for
it
general checks.
feels Yeah, it feels really good. I was actually just talking to a friend of mine that I ran a one shot of Blades for, who was telling me that the math for like the dice mechanic in Blades of the Dark is really mostly the same as Powered by the Apocalypse. Like rolling 2d6s and taking the higher one is pretty similar to rolling 2d6 and adding one in Powered by the Apocalypse. And rolling 3d6 is like a +3. Or no, yeah, it's like rolling 1d6 is like a +1 in Powered by the Apocalypse. Rolling 2d6 is like a +2, and rolling 3d6 is like a +3. But it feels different. It really feels great to stack all those dice in your hand. And the way Blades in the Dark lets you do it, it's like, well, you start with how good you are at the action you're taking, and then maybe you push yourself and you get another die. Maybe somebody helps you and you get another die. Or maybe you take a devil's bargain and you get another die. And that feeling of just like accumulating your dice, spending all your resources, saying what you're willing to like to sacrifice to make this happen. That's like, it's the juice. It's great. It's awesome.
I just and the simplicity of it as well. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Powered by the Apocalypse, the partial success mechanics, right? You've got a miss, you've got partial success, and then you've got your success, and then maybe a critical success. Those kind of thresholds,
Yeah.
but just the speed of okay, I have three, so grab three dice, roll it, and I don't have to do any math. I just look at the highest number, right? Like give me my sixes. That's all I
Yeah.
want. It's just so
Totally.
much faster to, and then you don't get into the like, well, it was okay, it was a 14, but I didn't add three, and then okay, so 17. You kind of down.
That's why, yes, absolutely. What I love about it is when the dice hit the table, you know if you succeeded instantly, which is I hypothesize why the natural 20 is actually so exciting. It's not exciting because it's rare. It's really not that rare. It happens pretty often. It's exciting because it's one of the only results where when it hits the table, you instantly know what the outcome is. So like it's that instant gratification. It's that instant like it's that oh shit moment of the like the dice hits the table and you have your answer. You don't need to look to the GM to know that this is going to be good for you. You like so you have cause to celebrate right away. There's no hang time. And so like knowing that you're just looking for the 6. We just need the 6. When the dice hit the table, like scanning your dice to see if you got the 6. And then when you see it or when you see 2 of them, like what great news. It's great news. And as a GM, it's so easy for me to run games like this because of the sort of success with a cost, success with a complication, and the players are empowered to say like what they do, what they roll, what they want to contribute to the scene. It takes so much of my workload away. And when the system is telling me, okay, they get what they want, but you're going to tick the clock twice, maybe, or you're going to give them a complication, it means that I can go into a Blades in the Dark session with like a sentence less of prep, a word cloud. That's what I do. I don't need to prep Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark, I say it runs itself. Like I am just there to like try and make more interesting stuff happen. And even sometimes to be like, I was this one shot that I just ran in the middle of the session, like they had split the party and half the party was doing like the heist proper. And the other was kind of just making a distraction and had basically done a seance to distract these nobles while the safe cracking team was in their vault trying to blow it open. And we took a break and I thought, oh my gosh, wait, what if this seance is part of the plan? Maybe what if they're also trying to steal the ghost that they're summoning? And so I pitched that to the players and they're like, great, we love that. The ghost that we're summoning in this seance is now also part of the score. And so that was like, it really makes me feel like I'm part of the crew, like I'm part of the game. I'm not just the adversary. I'm also a fellow collaborator. And the players are empowered to say stuff like that too. Like if the player had thought of that, I would absolutely say yes. Like absolutely, this has all been part of the plan. This is what you wanted from the start.
For Blades in the Dark, I know it's a little bit of a shift coming from a more traditional game where, for example, the game master isn't rolling dice. And if I remember the rules correctly, in Blades, the player gets to decide which like skill attributes they want to use, correct?
Correct. Yes. It's great because the player tells me what they're actually doing. The player tells me like what they want to do, what they actually want to accomplish. And what the GM's job is to say, okay, how risky and how effective is that? Because the GM can't say if somebody wants to like fight someone, wants to like fight their way through a crowd. The GM can't say roll skirmish. The player has to say, I'm going to skirmish my way through this crowd. I'm going to like elbow or muscle. But they could also say, I'm going to sneak through this crowd, or I'm just going to barrel through this crowd. They could say, I'm going to prowl through this crowd. Or they could say, I'm going to wreck through this crowd. Like I'm going to like bowl over anybody in my way and I'm going to wreck it. And like I can't say no to any of that, which is good. I think we give the player the agency to say what they're doing. What I have the power to do is to say like, okay, if you're sneaking through this crowd, that's less risky, but you're going to do it slower. So maybe you're in a controlled position to do that with limited effect. Like it's going to take you more time to get through the crowd that way. If you're barreling through the crowd, if you're wrecking through the crowd, that's desperate. Like you are betting that there's nobody in the crowd who's going to stand up to you or who can stop you, but it's going to have great effect. Like you're going to get through the crowd very quickly if you are just barreling your way. So it's basically saying like how good can this succeed? How bad can it fail? And the game Blades in the Dark, in my opinion, really begins when the GM does say no. And the way the GM is empowered to say no is to say 0 effect. Sure, you can do that. It'll have 0 effect. And even that doesn't mean that the player can't do it. It just means that they have to use the tools at their disposal to make their action more effective. So if someone's like, there's a demon in front of you, and they're like, I want to shoot it. I'm like, cool, that's desperate with zero effect. Then they're like, oh shit, this demon's really tough. Bullets aren't going to do anything against it. But the game gives you tools. It empowers the players to make their actions more effective. Like you can push yourself and get better effect. So already, like just all they have to do is like pay 2 stress off their character sheet and be like, all right, I'm going to get this from 0 to limited. And now they are going to shoot a demon so hard that it can actually hurt it. And then, but wait, there's more because someone else can flash back and say like, all right, cool. Before this job, I made you some like special bullets that are designed to be effective against demons, and they can roll for that. And then now I said 0, but now we're at desperate and standard. Now you can shoot a bullet at a demon that's gonna give it a wound. Like you're about to hurt a demon. And then and then there's more stuff you can do. You can be like, oh great, I have this item on my character sheet. Like my weapon is fine, actually. My weapon is high quality. And I'm like, great, that's actually gonna push you to desperate and great. And that's where the game starts, is when I say, like, that's not gonna do anything. And they're gonna be like, oh, well, let's pour all of our resources into making this insanely effective. And it makes the players feel amazing, and the characters look competent. And like there's this great moment, the character gets this great moment where they're like pointing a gun at a demon. The demon gets to like laugh it off, like, you think that is gonna like hurt me? And then they get to pull the trigger and roll the dice and see like maybe it does. And then you get that moment where the demon like looks down at the bullet wound that they've received, like, what the fuck? So like that's why I love the game. That's why I love the game. It empowers the players in a way that like, and the GM in a way that is collaborative. It's always going to build towards something. Even the GM saying, no, that doesn't work, is actually just the stepping stone. It's the building block for making a scene where actually the players can say it does work, and here's why. And they have to narratively justify it with their flashbacks, with their stress, with their equipment. Like that's collaborative storytelling. Like it's giving you all the tools to empower the players with like a great deal of agency. And that's why I love Blades in the Dark so much.
I think this is actually a very good kind of boiling down of the Blades mechanics in a way that I haven't even quite heard it explained. So I appreciate that. But it really gives the players the ability to say, you said it has 0 effect, and the players then say, hold my beer.
Yes. They're like, yes, exactly. It's that moment where like the GM is playing the adversary, but they're playing the adversary because like it's fun. It's fun to beat the adversary. And the GM knows they're doing this. The GM saying, ha ha ha, you can never defeat me. And exactly, the player gets to say, hold my beer. And that philosophy it's like all over Blades in the Dark. Like there's also the resistance roll where you can take any consequence that the GM gives you and you can say, no, I'll resist that. So, which is why my other favorite thing to do in Blades in the Dark is to give a consequence like, yeah, this demon pounces on you and snaps you in half. You are dead. You're instantly dead. And the player can say, wait, hang on. I'm going to resist that. And then like I can still like hurt them if I so decide. Like I can say, okay, you resist dying, but you're like your spine is broken, maybe. Or I might say like, okay, you get out of the way at the last second, you're just nicked. You take a little bit. But I can also say like, yeah, you resist it totally, completely. You avoid the consequence entirely. And that's how you sort of modulate the tone of your game or the level of your threats. But like the player is empowered to say, no, I don't don't think I die here. I think I get out of the way actually. And it's that same kind of thing. It's fun to say, hold my beer and then win. And the game gives you the tools to do that. It seeds the tools to give you the power to create those moments.
So what tips would you give to somebody who is going from a more traditional system to a Blades system?
Yeah, I would say the key sticking points are are in like are in prep, in being adversarial, and in being generous with information. So in Blades in the Dark, you don't want to prep. Not even the players want to prep. Blades in the Dark is actually, it sings its best when players leap right into the action, when they go right for the score. They'll, figure out what it is you want to do, what your ultimate goal is, and then sort of a loose sketch of how you're going to do it. But jump right into the action as soon as you can. And GMs don't prep, because if you prep something, like in the philosophy of the Blades of the Dark is like, we spend so much time in RPGs preparing things that we don't actually end up using. So like, why sit at a table for 2 hours prepping every single detail of a heist when you know something's going to go wrong? You know something's going to mess up. You know the plan is going to go out the window. And like, if you're prepping for every contingency, like a solid percentage of that prep is never going to come up. They're like, well, what if they do this? What if they do that? And if that's not on the docket, like it's like trying to fit two puzzle pieces together, the player's prep and the GM's prep, that fundamentally don't fit together. And so if the GM has prepped something and the players do go in a different direction, they try something different, they make a different assumption about the world or the game, all the GM's prep goes away too. And we're back to where we started. So why not cut out the middleman and just start and play to find out. Let the game guide us. Let the game tell us, and let the players and their contributions and the GM and their contributions sort of do this alchemy to make the score, to make the game run and tick and flow smoothly. So I would say ease up on the prep, to really hold on loosely, give them opportunities, give them ideas, but don't like draw a map out of every room in the building, because then when the players are like, okay, great, is there a ventilation shaft in here? You can say yeah, or you can say let's roll survey to see if you can find one, rather than no, that's not on my map actually, so there isn't one. It's like it's keeping yourself open to collaboration. And by the same token, that sort of brings me to generosity of information. A lot of traditional games monopolize good, actionable information and give it to the GM. And I believe the GM's job is to take their monopoly on good, actionable information and shovel it to the players as fast as possible. That means giving them opportunities, telling them what's going on in town, like telling them what they, as residents, as inhabitants of the imaginary world, would know about the world and the way it operates and who the people are in it. It's like allowing them to be experts in their own areas of expertise. Like if you have a whisper, a ghost expert on your crew, like you tell them what they know about ghosts. You tell them what they know about the spirit wardens or the dimmer sisters or the spirit trade, right? You like give them everything that their character would know. Be generous with information, because ultimately players look into the world, the RPG, the shared imaginary world of the role-playing game, only through the window that the GM gives them. And why frost the glass? Why only give them a keyhole? Because that's everything they have to operate on. Give them as much information as possible. Open that window, make it as big and crystal clear as possible. Like, this is the sort of the origin of the old chestnut that a lot of GMs seem to say, like, oh, my players are so stupid. Like, my players, they don't know what's going on. And it's like, that's because you are monopolizing good information. You have the full picture. Players have the keyhole that you give them to look through into the imaginary world. So I say GMs, be generous with information and allow the players to contribute information as well. Allow the players to say, I know a guy actually who's an expert on this, or to say, like, I'm a whisper, I've done this before, I think ghosts behave like this, and be willing to say, yes, you're right actually. like allow your players to contribute to the world building as well. And that's something that comes, I think, with a certain skill level of player, like a certain experience level of player who is comfortable offering up world building and adding and contributing to the world. But like you can't call RPGs collaborative storytelling games. You can't call them like you can't call them collaborative. You can't say your game gives players agency if you're not letting players contribute like that. I believe that's my philosophy. And the last is collaboration. Is a lot of the times the traditional game framework frames the GM as the adversary, as the as the villain, as you are the person who is there to defeat the players or challenge them or give them a run for their money. And that's true. But but Blades in the Dark makes me feel, like I said, like part of the crew. Like I'm part of the game. It makes so when I talk about Blades in the Dark sessions, this was pointed out to me by another friend of mine. I always say we, even though I was running the game. I was like, yeah, last week we stole a ghost and a magic staff from an archive, and I say we because I really felt like I was a part of it. Like there's a principle: be a fan of the players. That's from Apocalypse World, I think, but it's in Blades in the Dark too. Your goal, your idea is not to be the player's adversary. It's to be their biggest fan. And the way to be their biggest fan is to like give them the opportunity to do cool shit. Is to tell them their bullet is going to have zero effect on the demon, because you're not actually telling them, no, you can't do that. You're saying, no, this is going to need to be a way cooler. You're going to need to be way more badass. And then handing that off to the players for them to be like, okay, challenge accepted.
I love it. I was going to ask you, so you say to be open with your information, and I've realized that as well in running my games, and also leaning into that, giving the players information as if they are audience members. How much information do you like to give your players that maybe the characters themselves wouldn't know?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite tools. One of my favorite tricks is I do like to drip feed my players information that their characters wouldn't know. And I like sometimes to even tell players, like, if they get something as part of a consequence, like if they're trying to like investigate something, I might tell the player, like, your character is going to get bad information here. I'll tell them, like, this person is going to lie to or mislead you. And then it's kind of up to the player whether they want to act on that bad information and get the complication, get the fun drama that's going to result, or if they want their character to be skeptical of this information and maybe do more work to corroborate it or deny it or find the real answer. Either way, it's going to lead to more play. It's if the player's like, I don't know about this, like, let's double check, or let's cross reference that. Like, that's going to lead to more play. That's going to lead to another scene. And if they say, great, cool, we got the information we needed, wink, and they go act on it, like, that's going to lead to more play too when they find out, hopefully very soon. That's another part of being generous with information, is if the players are acting on bad information or a misconception, convey that to them very quickly. Like, hit them with the consequences for doing that very soon, and let them adjust. So I will tell players, and I'll also tell players, like, I've been getting more into doing this lately. Like, I think it would be really cool if we did this, or I think it would be really cool. I had an idea for a score where maybe you do this. And I'll tell the players, like, is that something you're interested in? And if so, they can have the characters bend toward that score. Even though the characters don't know, like, hey, I think it would be really cool if we did all this, this is another one that works really well in games other than Blades in the Dark, like in games where you do prep, in traditional games, like where if you've prepped this really cool set piece, this combat or this dungeon or this adventure, you can say, hey, I put something really cool over here. And you can tell your players that and say, like, what might entice your characters to go that way. And then you can literally you can say up top to your players, I've got something really fun planned for you. And then you can make sure you actually get to play it. You actually get to present it to them by presenting it to the players first and then asking them, how can we get our characters over there? Like, how can we get our game to bend in that direction? And I think that's like a really useful thing because I see there's like the old meme of like, oh, the players, I prepared this whole town and the players are like, let's go one town over instead. And then what everybody says is like, oh, just move the town you prepared to the place they go. And I really don't like that advice. Why not just tell the players like, hey, I prepped this town because I thought we were going to go to it and I'm really proud of it and I think it's cool. Like, do you think you could find a way to justify going to that town? And if your players are your friends, which God, I hope they are, they're gonna hopefully they're gonna be like, yeah, of course. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. And then they'll go and you'll have a great time. And it's like, don't forget that you are also a group of human friends at the table. You're not just your characters. You can curate the experience you want for yourselves. You can communicate.
Yeah, I think that's good advice to kind of lean into some of the prep that you have done. I did want to ask so not necessarily specifically blades, because we have talked a lot about that, but it's okay if it is. Of all of your games that you have tried, are there specific processes or mechanics or little things, ways of thinking that you tend to, regardless of what system you're currently playing in, that you tend to kind of steal from other systems and then bring to your DMing style?
Oh yeah. Oh, without a doubt. And Blades is probably the biggest example because I use clocks in most games I run. Like I'll bring clocks into a lot of games. They're just so intuitive for time pressure, for things that can't really resolve in one roll, multiple step processes. So I'll bring clocks, or if I'm just like counting down to like the end of the day, I'll like, okay, it seems like enough time has passed. Like we'll fill in one clock on the day. When this clock is filled, the day's over. Or I'll even bring that into dungeon crawls. If like every hour we're gonna check for random encounters, I'm gonna make a 6 clock for each 10 minutes. And basically everything you do, it's really just the dungeon turn from old school games. It's like, everything you do is gonna take about 10 minutes and we'll fill in one of those clock segments. And when that clock segment fills, we'll check for random encounters maybe. So I love clocks for that. I actually just finished a 3-shot of Thirsty Sword Lesbians, where the sort of catch-all mechanic Defy Disaster includes as part of the mechanics. The player has to say what they're willing to sacrifice to get this action done. And I really loved that. And I think I might take that for some of my other games. I might say like, what are you willing to like before a roll? I'm like, what are you willing to sacrifice to make sure this happens? Because I pull also partial success with a cost. I think it's really great for making sure that your game doesn't hit a dead end, and that the narrative is always rolling. I do think that flat failure does have its place, that like this opportunity is gone and you're going to have to think of something different. You're going to have to solve this problem, try something new. But I think failing forward and success with a cost is as a general rule more interesting than flat failure. But I do think failure has its place and I use it judiciously. But I would say it's the generosity with information thing is really a thing that I've plucked and gleaned from a lot of games. A lot of games are just like really hammering how important it is to communicate as much actionable information as possible to your players. And I feel like that's sort of accreted in my philosophy and become its like foundation. It's like my foundational principle is like give the players as clear and large a window into the game world as possible. But I would say I'm always, always, always picking stuff up like a magpie from other game systems and like incorporating it into my style as like cornerstones. That's why I'm so hungry for new systems and for new ways of doing things. Because I want to see like what other people have going on. Stuff like being able to say I know a guy is like that's another thing that I'll put in every game. A player's always empowered to say they know a guy. Sometimes we might see if that guy still likes you, or if that guy hates you, or if that guy is in trouble that you need to rescue them from before you can get what they know out of them. But yeah, I'm always gathering up little treasures, little mechanical treasures to put in my games.
I like the I know a guy, and then just do a roll and see like, do they owe you a favor? Do you owe
Yeah,
them a favor?
yeah. When you go looking to them for them, are they happy to see you?
The what are you willing to give up mechanic, or just that question in the game, because I haven't played Thirsty Sword Lesbians. Does that give you any sort of like mechanical benefit, or how does that kind of pan out in terms of the system?
So it's a requirement to use the move. So to use the move Defy Disaster, you need two things. You need to be defying disaster, which is like it seems obvious, but like you can't roll Defy Disaster unless there's disaster to defy. So like in the fiction, there needs to be the potential for disaster that you are defying, that you are acting in defiance of, and you need to state what you're willing to sacrifice to defy this disaster. So you need to know how bad it could be and then what you're willing to give up to make sure it's not that bad. So it allows you basically being willing to sacrifice allows you to defy disaster in the first place, which is like in a way it kind of models the real world. Like when we do something with a crazy risk, like we are putting ourselves on the line and we are saying this, we are staking. This is what I'm willing to give up to try and make this happen. This is what I'm willing to give up to take this leap, to make this plunge, to try something that could end in disaster. Here's what I'm willing to give up to make it happen. And it has the double duty of if they get success with a cost, the GM already has a good idea of a choice to hit them with or a sacrifice to offer them. Like you said you were willing to sacrifice like your body or your ability to escape this situation to make this happen. Like you can do it. You can like leap into this danger, but the door is going to close behind you and you are going to be trapped. Like and then like that's drama. That's you've given the GM something that you stated you were willing to give to make this work. And they'll say, "Great, you can make it work, but you got to give what you said what you've got to give what you anteed up, basically. It's the ante."
Sure. Yeah, I like that. I haven't heard that one before, but I can see that being very useful, even in a traditional game sense, just to kind of give you that fail forward ability.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's kind of like it's basically the devil's bargain from Blades in the Dark, except it doesn't actually give you the extra die, it doesn't give you the bonus. It just allows you to defy disaster, which is a very powerful move. Like you can do a lot of shit if you succeed at that. So I guess it like what it does is it gives you access to the defy disaster move.
Right. All right. Well, I think we're probably about ready to wrap up this interview section. So, before we do that, is there anything else you would like to touch on or mention?
Oh, I've been, I would say, like, just as a sort of a cat to everything I've been talking about like exploring new ground and like the cutting edge in RPGs. I've been getting into solo games recently, which I for the longest time told myself like, "Oh, I'm not into solo games," I said, having never played one. And then I played one for the first time and I was like, "Oh, fuck, this one was fun. It was good." And now I'm like, so I realized that I had sort of been closing myself off to this entire world of innovation that's happening in RPGs with solo games. And then I tried one and I liked it. And now I'm like, geez. My world just got bigger and greener and more vibrant and diverse. And now I have to try all these games. But like I sort of relate to the safety, to the comfort of saying like, oh, that those games aren't for me. And then sort of the like trying them and realizing you do like them, and actually your world is a lot bigger than you thought, and like leaving your comfort zone. So like I really relate to folks who feel as though they don't aren't interested in any other games, but like when you take the jump, like when you take the plunge, it's really rewarding. Like I have already tried like 2 or 3 solo games, and I'm really glad that I did, because there's good tech in there. There's good stuff. There's interesting stuff. It's like a whetstone for the RPG brain, because it's just you and the other player is the book. Like the kind of the adversary is the book. Like the book is giving you prompts and everything's coming out of you, but like it's inspired by this book. And really that's all an RPG should do. It should inspire its players. And that, I think, is that's my final note.
Well, I love it. And I guess one thing that we didn't really get to touch on that I wanted to talk to you about, maybe we'll have to save it for another episode, is your professional game mastering.
Oh yeah.
Um, is that something, I don't know if we necessarily have a lot of time to talk about it now, but would you like to get your socials and your profile?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I'm scene 4. That's SCENE_FOUR on Twitter and TikTok, where I give GM advice and game recommendations. And I have a profile on startplaying.com